A very good evening to you. I'm Lisa Lord, and my special guest is the Minister of State in the Office of the Attorney General with responsibility for crime prevention, the Honorable Corey Lane. Minister, thank you so much for joining us on your program.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
No, you're most welcome. You were appointed to this position almost a year ago on October 26, 2022. And you came in at a time when the island was recording more violent crimes than usual. But before we look at crime holistically, I want to look at Corey Lane. You have been working with at-risk youth for as long as I can remember. You were the founder of the Nature Fund Ranch, and you would have worked with the prison service in particular over the years. Tell me about how you got involved.
Right, if I had to go back, I would probably have to start at about 7 when I became a Cub Scout. And I learned about, thinking of others before yourself. And I wanted to be that kind of community type person, giving back. A lot happened between that period. So I actually found myself as an at-risk youth, found myself on the block, found myself in conflict with the law. So I had a good understanding of what it meant to be pushed, the pull and pull factors, again, involving a life of crime, a life of gang life, and so on. But I would say the turning point, the pivot point, was when I was 15 years old. I was in class at Lodge, and my aunt turned up at the school and let me know my mom had passed away while giving birth to my twin sisters. And it was really at that point that I retreated within myself. And I used that opportunity, that emotional pain and all that thing to kind of translate it into something positive. I retreated to the library at the time, and I spent a lot of times in the encyclopedias at that time. It wasn't Google, it was encyclopedias. And looking for ideas and so on for things that could engage at-risk youth like myself. And that has really brought about the birth of the Nature Fund Ranch, 25 years later. So it got heavily involved in so many different things. From getting involved with the ranch, working with at-risk youth, that took me to working with the HIV/AIDS Commission, understanding public campaigns. It took me to the prison, working with the at-risk youth within the prison, and also maximum security as well, gave me a good understanding for rehabilitation, criminal justice system, etc., etc. So it really took me right across the board. I got involved with Youth Parliament, the Youth Development Council. I went to almost every panel discussion. I had a very, very good appetite coming out from my scout leader, Mr. John King, in relation to getting involved in all things. I wanted to know all matters, right? Regional, international, politics, current affairs. That saw me then, get involved in brass stats and being on the talk show host and, working and gathering all of that time, all of this experience, not knowing that it will bring me to a pinnacle today where you can use all of those various elements to kind of direct crime prevention for Barbados through social interventions. And when I look back and every single day I sit here and I developing missions and policies and programs, I could draw on all of that experience over the last 25 years.
No, crime prevention is a tall order. Some might ask, can you really prevent crime? But I know that there is a national crime prevention plan in place with several measures. Take me through some of them.
Right. So I will start by saying, yes, you can prevent crime. And from the day I was appointed to know, my thoughts were really around what is the best practice. And I started to look around the world. I started to look at our own conversations in this country. So through the same panel discussions, conferences, if you look, there are so many reports, so many recommendations, so many papers. We had a lot of sessions in this country on crime prevention, and there were a lot of sessions around the world on crime prevention. If you look at the theory, it talks about primary, secondary, and tertiary crime prevention. Now, I started by looking at that, and then I started to look at my own experience and what I think can even be better and what was needed for Barbados. And we developed it here in this office with 3 pillars. Or 3 phases, I should say. Phase 1 was to reduce the heat on the street that you started by talking about. That was really phase 1. As you know, we had some gang wars and we had a lot of homicides. We had a lot of stuff going on. The question was, how do you reduce that heat on the street? That's part 1. Part 2 is the normal crime prevention thing happening across average societies, which is how do you prevent criminals from committing crime or make it more difficult for them to take the benefit out of them, increase fines, increase sentences, make it more difficult by getting CCTV and lighting and debushing and patrols. That's called situational crime prevention. That's really our phase 2. Our phase 3 now is really how do you prevent people, young people, people general, from becoming criminals in the first place. And to me, that is the true essence of how you can truly and genuinely prevent crime, if you can get to the parents and help them to parent even better, if you can get to the young people and give them motivation and direction and goals and get them on a direction where they do not want to become criminals or they do not get involved in crime, that is the ultimate long-term, genuine, kind of what I would say is sustainable crime prevention for any society. That is what we've been doing, and we've been seeing success in that.
Tell me about the actual programs that you have under the crime plan.
Okay, so under the crime plan, we have a number of pillars. So we have the public education pillar. And in that pillar, what we are doing now, we've started already, is to put together some type of, mini series, web series, and all these different things where we'll be able to educate the public into a lot of things that we believe that they need to know. For instance, the consequences of crime. In my moving around, doing graduation speeches, doing presentations at schools, even within the prison, one of the things I recognize is that a lot of people don't understand the true consequences of crime. They believe that crime has a consequence. If you get caught, you go to court, you may get a punishment, and you may have little police issues and so on. What they don't understand is the comprehensive list of the consequence of crime, the impact on your family, the impact on your future trying to get a police certificate, carton, you can't get work, you can't reintegrate into the society. The number of lawyers that own property because you can't pay the lawyer, your criminal lawyers, the money, your grandmother, your mother, and all of these different people having to give up all their life savings to try to get you out of prison. The other part that people don't understand, I said this a number of times and I reiterate it because it's so important, is that even being the MP for the city, when it came in and they had all this war going on, I would have to go to a lot of vigils and I'll attend a lot of funerals. And there was a particular funeral that rocked me, and that was a guy, his brother had died a few months before he died. It was this funeral. I was asked to make a speech, and it was so hard to make the speech because just before the speech, his 7-year-old and 9-year-old stood before his casket singing "Dance with My Father Again." And there wasn't a dry eye in that church, and rightfully so. The impact is so long-term. As I move across the society and I interact with survivors of crime or victims of crime, one of the other things that struck me is that even in some of these households that live in poverty, and there's one family that I talk about a lot in my own mind and to some people, you visit them, it's a 2-bedroom house, 9 people living in the house, somebody's been shot, their bedroom is like a shrine. So 6 months later, that parts across the bed, nobody's sleeping in that room, the other's still sleeping in the chair in the front house and sleeping all over the house. It just shows you that in discussion with these families, they say, we put on the t-shirts, we go to the funerals, people, and they come to the funeral and they go to the wake and they think that that's the end. But every birthday, every Christmas, every anniversary of anything, they feel that pain like it happened yesterday. When you take just these plus many, many other aspects, people don't understand the whole consequence of crime. So there's a particular mini-series that we're actually putting together all right now as I speak to put these type of information out to the public before it is too late. The other part we're going to talk about is national engagement, where we've been engaging with communities, families, schools, and just across the board. One of the main programs in that is something called Guns Gone, Gloves On. And it's really a sports program for at-risk youth, getting them involved in boxing, stick licking, anything they actually want to do. There's the beach wrestling now, there's hockey, swimming, pickleball. We're going all out to make sure that we give them avenues and an alternative. Because it's all well and good to say, put down the gun, put down the spliff. But we need to put something in their hands. Because one thing about being young is about being active. And one of the things that pulled me to the block when I went on the block was because I was bored. I had to choose between, staying inside and watching golf or whatever, or being on the block. And the block was the only alternative at the time. And that's one of the reasons why I created the Nature Fun Ranch, to give people an alternative, to go there. You can learn to drive, you can get involved in a jockey program, in agriculture. And there was just that desire, drive, thirst, hunger to get involved in something. But it has to be fun, challenging, and adventurous.
What other programs are there?
Right, so there are many, many other programs I want to speak about at this time. There are other pillars speaks to violence reduction. So we're looking at the gang and gun program, the DIP program, which we'll talk about, intimate partner, sexual violence, violence against children, violence against the elderly. All of these we work in partnership with with other organizations working in this field already, but we do see that as part of crime prevention. Sometimes people may get the false idea or the myth that when we talk about crime, we're only talking about homicides. But the reality is there's so many different types of crime. And if we go to the root, and that's very, very critical, what I love about what I've been able to do here is not to focus on the fruit or the outcome or what is the symptom, but to trace back to the root. And one of the things that we found is the normal root is what people have been talking about for some time, poor parenting, poverty, and so on. But we went even deeper. And what we found was that even deeper than all of those surface roots, the deep root, were things like childhood trauma, our collective trauma as a people and all this. You go really, really deep. You realize that a lot of people are hurting. They don't know how to express it. A lot of people don't even know that the hurt from many, many years ago really dictates how they treat to situations further and later in life. And as we put a lot of therapy programs, there's a serious parenting program we are rolling out now. There's a certain trauma program that we are rolling out now. We're working with a lot of partners, the Potter's House, Tony Alton, looking at emotional intelligence, looking at mediation and meditation. A lot of things that have just not been tried before and other things that have been tried that were successful and impactful that we're just giving scale to. Because I say in this office all the time, the formula is impact by scale equals transformation. So you may have impact, but having in small dribs and drabs. What I think is the role of a macro organization like the ministry is to take impactful programs, NGOs, civil society out there doing their thing and give them the support, the resources, the facilitation so that we can have it right across the society. The other major one is rehabilitation or rehabilitation pillar, which looks a lot at rehabilitation at government industrial school and rehabilitation coming out of Dawes prison. When we look at our statistics, when you see the latest statistics that really kind of disturb me, but I feel very confident that we can make a serious turnaround on is our recidivism statistic. So regionally, I'm told that our recidivism rate in the region is 65% and in Barbados is 70%. And that means that every 10 inmates that walk out of prison, 7 walk back in. Now, there are various reasons for that. Now, we like to focus a lot on personal responsibility and only personal responsibility, but I think we need to go further than that. Where people say, no, they have a choice. They need to do this. They need to do that. But when they come out and there is not that facilitation of family and church and society, it makes it more difficult. And I tell you it best this way. In talking to a lot of inmates, I've worked in prison, okay? I've seen what in prison is like. I know how difficult it is. I know the tears that they shed at night. I know the horrors that they go through. And then they leave, and then 5-6 months later, they're back. And I keep asking them for years, if prison is so hard, why do you return? If you are so disturbed, you cannot speak to your family, you can't get a newspaper, the food, the diet is horrible, why do you come back? And one of them said to me a few years ago, Corey, the reality is that prison is hard, but society is harder. I cannot get a certificate of character. I cannot get a job. I got a job in a gas station, and somebody walked in there and told the manager, do you know who that person is? I was fired at lunchtime. If I cannot get a police certificate of character, and even landlords asking for police certificate of character. So if I could get no housing, no job, no food, no nothing, what is the alternative? And different people will have different alternatives. That's the truth. So our rehabilitation programs are very important. That feeds into the public education, helping the public to understand. If we are truly a Christian society, we're not saying let us excuse everything these people do, don't let them hold. We got to hold them responsible. But we've got to work on the other R's too. It cannot be only about responsibility. It must be about redirecting. How do we engage diversion programs? It must be about rehabilitation and reform, and being able to reform somebody means them being able to be reintegrated into the society, for them to make amends through restorative justice, through victim compensation, through victim support as well, coming to terms to what they've done, and then reintegration. So there are a number of programs. We have a special project coordinator here, Terrell Giles. He works a lot on those programs. Actually, they're at the prison now doing a tour, a demo tour that we want to take some at-risk youth persons on. We want to give them a different tour this prison month. And they have a number of open days. And we want young people to go and see what prison is about. My concern with the tour over the years is that a lot of the times you see the positive that the prison is doing. You see the workshop, the art, and so on. You're impressed. But there's the other side of the prison when people are now coming in and they're going through induction and that difficult period. So we have some special tours that we want to look at in terms of letting these young people see beforehand what prison is really about. Because the reality is, right, a lot of people don't know what prison is until they get in there. Because when people come home, they tell you their own story. Some of them are embarrassed about what they go through in prison. So I think it is important if people can see beforehand, understand what it is about, that we will have that going on. But within the prison itself, we've partnered with the Next Step on the Ministry of Youth. They have a fantastic program. They're doing bartending and they have the cooking program. And I said to the inmates and I said to the Ministry of Youth, what was so impressive about that program is that when I went looking for a cooking program, but when I went, I saw a rehabilitation program. They are on the chef clothes, they out to the bow tie, and when they look in the mirror, they're not seeing an inmate anymore. They're seeing a chef, a bartender, a cook, a future business person. So those powerful rehabilitation programs we've helped to partner and to push, and we will continue to help to boost them. There's a music program, there's an agriculture program, there are a number of programs now being scaled up or develop new programs and scaling up the old programs. The last one is, as major for me really all as well, is the public policy and lobbying program. There are a number of things through the years, and from doing my own lit review with a number of recommendations coming out from Professor Devonish, the Criminal Justice Research and Planning Unit, Dr. Bradley Niles. And when we talk about Dr. Bradley Niles, we talked 30 years ago. When I look through the collation of all these recommendations over the last 30 years, I heard Magistrate Ian Weeks and these different people saying they've been calling for this and that for 30 years. What this ministry is really determined to do is to look at those very, very good ideas that have been put on the table and bring implementation to them. It's really the medicine for the implementation deficit disorder that we've suffered over the years. One such program is the Rehabilitation and Diversion Facility. Magistrates for years have been saying that they would like somewhere where they can refer a young person, a first-time offender, as opposed to putting them into the system. And they've never really had that place. My team here have worked together. We've put together the concept note. We've put together the draft cabinet paper. We're getting ready to get that to cabinet as well, to be able to give the society the options that it needs for dealing with the type of persons that we have within our society. So there's a lot on the public policy angle in terms of enforcement, intelligence, tactical, judicial, legal. There's so many aspects that I've read and seen. So, whoa, these are wonderful ideas. You talk to people, I've spoken to people like Sir David Simmons and all these various people that have been around for a while. And they say, oh, these are good ideas. So I said, how can I work with you now with this new role to make sure that we bring these things to action? We bring these things to implementation. It is not easy, but nothing good has ever come about by the word easy. It's always been about difficult and hard work. So those are the pillars, and they kind of wrap up the program in itself. But the one I want to zoom back into and focus on is preventing people from becoming criminals in the first place, as opposed to trying to prevent criminals from committing crime. How we've really been doing that is through our entertain, brain, train, sustain program. And that has gone beyond even my expectations. So what we've done is we've appointed a number of change agents within the communities. The difference between these change agents is that these are persons who have a lot of influence in communities, particularly vulnerable communities. Now, we have a number of programs like this, but I want to give the distinction to the public about this change agent program. So we have youth commissioners, we have community development officers, we have community police, and so on. These particular persons are persons that are on the ground. They live in the communities. They are very influential in communities. Some of them would have been, reformed persons before. They would have been in a life of crime before, or very high-risk persons before. They were very well selected. And what we've done is we've asked them to be out there as we introduce programs and ensure that we get the buy-in of the community. We've had about 4 or 5 programs so far, and we've had to turn back at risk, hard to reach, can't reach unstructured young persons. And that really is the proof of the pudding, was the eating there. And they have shown us and demonstrated time and time again that they can do it. So we started with entertainment. Entertainment, again, boredom, entertainment. So we got them to come out. So we had a crabbing night, and we had booked this truck. We said we can kill a truck of them and do 30. When the names started coming from the change agent, we had to get 2 trucks. Then we had to get 2 trucks and 2 buses. And then we had to say, okay, we got to turn back people now. And they said, aha, we going on the right road. Then we did this thing called flip the script, which we actually know we did a hike, and the same thing happened. We had to get 4 more buses. And they said, okay, we got their attention. But now we got their attention, what we can do with it. So we went into brain. We have to adjust the mindset of these people. We can't just give them entertainment. So we did Flip Your Script. Flip Your Script is a personal development program where they went into these motivational sessions with Imran Richards, and they had Jordan English, and these people came and shaped them up like a TED Talk, but with serious thought, and had them like bedazzled, right? And then we said we just can't leave it there. So they're now in the 3rd week of their 8-week personal development programs, where they're learning now about how to dress and how to eat and how to do a CV and how to interview and the first thing to start with is, who am I? These personal reflection programs, how you speak to people and how people take it, all of these different things. And that has been going really wonderful as well. Again, the numbers, and some of my colleagues actually point out to me that what they're really impressed with is the type of people that we see coming. Now, normally when you see people coming at the bareback or the barefoot or whatever, you take a step back. But for us, we celebrate. We go and get our shirts. We give them the shirts, you know what I mean, or give them a proper attire and tell them, yeah, come in. We ain't turning you back, because it's really you that we want to get to. Because a lot of these persons were not being reached, or people really cast them away. One of the saddest things for me, and I can show you how I knew that these change agents were really being real with me. They submitted some names, and then we had an event 2-3 days later, and then a number of the people couldn't make it, and they asked me, you signed up these people, why they're not here? They reminded, they were the persons who would have been involved or allegedly involved with beating up the homeless in the city. So that means that we were really getting them at risk, high risk, hard to reach young people. So the next part now, as I said, we move from brain now, we moving them into training. Now you're going to hear about the launch of Start Wise soon, which is a program where ultimately we want to train 3,200 young people over a 2-year period in Google Tech and in Google Certificate, and so that they could work from Barbados for good paying wages, good paying salaries after training them. We got a number of training programs going on. We got the Community Wealth Builders program. Those are people who want to do programs within their community in terms of building and fixing houses, get involved in transport and tourism project. You know, they want to get the umbrellas and the beach chairs, and they want to be involved. So the training is to make sure that they are now employable, making sure they get their license, working with the Ministry of Youth. They have a program with that, filtering them to that program. There's another program that they have in terms of opening businesses with persons who were formerly on the block, getting them involved and making sure that they have that pathway to success. So we've been working there. And then the ultimate one is sustain. After you do this training and you get the money right and you get their attention, what's important is that they can sustain themselves and their family. Whether that be through a job, into a career, small business, big business, entrepreneurship. We have 2 officers in our project unit that work registering businesses, and they've been registering a number of businesses. The last time I heard it was at 18, but I had a meeting yesterday, it was updated over 40 something that they've registered, and giving people that direction, how to get to fund access, how to go to the trust fund, how to go to the bank, insurance, bank account, helping them through these things. Because one of the things that I hear so much, and again, when I get to speak to these people directly, is that, Corey, we never had a boy ready to guide me. Never had a boy to listen to me. Never had a boy to direct me. And I said to them, you know, in some cases, you probably did, but you didn't appreciate it when you had it. You probably did, but you didn't listen at the time, but you do have now. Some of them never had it. And that's why sometimes I'd be nervous about talking about second chance program, because some of these never had a first chance. They came up in a family or in a unit that really was struggling and wasn't able to provide the guidance. And that's why we have our parenting program as well. Because some parents come and say, you know, to me, I didn't know what to do. And with all of that said, I think that as we go through the entertain, brain, train, and sustain, and working particularly with these young people and these youth adventure clubs that have been set up now, we have them, and we have them now almost with the type of face time that I would like. And why do I say that? If you think of a block and how a block opens 24/7. The block don't have a closed date. They open 24/7, including Sundays, see you tomorrow. That is how they operate. And a lot of our positive programs operate for our week. So when you look at the balance and the verses, we need to have programs with more face time involvement, where the average person, from a study that I did, they could learn up to 11 hours in a day before they take a break and go home and come back again. A block will open sometimes around, you see people coming out 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. You see people going in 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. So you see the length of time. And that's why these programs have to be so engaging, and have to be so many programs, so you're keeping them engaged as well in something positive, but at an innovative level, because it cannot be boring. Over the years, even as an at-risk youth, one of the things I recognize, a lot of the wholesome programs were very boring. Very, very boring. Very, very boring. And this is why whenever we design programs or reflecting on programs that are submitted to me, I would look to say, as an at-risk youth, would I want to participate in that? And that's the question that we ask. So that really gives a good summary of some of the things that we're doing.
A lot of programs.
Yes, correct.
2 things stood out when you're discussing the root causes. You looked at poverty and poor parenting. What is the major root cause after spending so much time with at-risk youth that leads them to a life of crime?
I would say it's always a combination of factors, but I would say that parenting is really on the top of the list. Parenting can make you or break you. That is the truth. Some people, though, actually get through life in spite of bad parenting, as opposed to because of bad parenting. So they've had some kind of role model that they've been able to look to. It may be an uncle, it may be a teacher. A lot of cases is teachers who will say, you know, let me put hands down on you and try to make you into something. Right? We have less and less of that now, as an observation, not as a study, as an observation. But parenting is a major, major, major one. There's a lot of mental illness in our country as well. And it's something that we don't speak to because we don't understand it a lot of the times. We think that people either sane or crazy, right? And there's a spectrum there. So there's a lot of mental illness. And then some of that is then supplemented with drugs. And then it becomes drug abuse. And then that makes the situation worse as well. And then there's this whole idea of poverty. Now, a lot of people will say, you know, well, I was in poverty and I didn't do this, so they may have to do it. But we all have different thresholds for pain and for how we deal with situations. And this is borne out best when you look at 2 children in the same house, same parents, same school, and they come out 2 different ways. They have different DNA makeup in terms of their threshold for pain, their threshold for bullying, their threshold for peer pressure. Every individual fingerprint is different. Every snowflake is different. How much more every individual human is so different. But poverty can drive people, but there's also a number of other factors. Their strength to be able to stand up and say, no, I can do the right thing, and those different things. So the number of social determinants that actually feed into crime may be a very long list. You know, they have a lot of friction in homes, a lot of friction between mother and father, and that drive a wedge between children and the way they relate to their family. So there's a long list of things. But when you get down to the real root of it, a lot of it speaks, as I said, our deep root is that trauma in terms of things that happened in the past.
There's still a lot more to discuss, Minister. Stay with us. You're watching One on One.
Want to be in a medicinal cannabis industry? Then it's important to know your numbers. There are 8 licenses, all of which are for 5 years. 2 of those licenses come with tiers. Cultivation has 4, processor has 3. Don't have the money to pay up front? Then the 60/40 payment plan is the number to know. 60% of the total license fee up front, with the 40% paid in the first 3 years of the 5-year license. Pay your way either annually, quarterly, or monthly. For more information, visit our website at www.bmcla.bb.
Hello, I'm Marilyn Rice-Boyne, President of the Barbados Association of Retired Persons, BAR. I'm your president. And today I'm here to encourage you to go out and pin your ID card. It's safe. There's absolutely nothing to worry about. Make today the day that you go out and pin your card. You can go to the post office, you can go to any bus terminal, and as you go to pin that card, take a friend. Make it a joint project. And let's all get these cards pinned before the deadline of January 2024.
Welcome back as we continue our discussion with the Minister of State in the Office of the Attorney General with responsibility for crime prevention, the Honorable Corey Lane. Minister Lane, in the first half, we would have looked at various programs under the National Crime Prevention Plan. Your biggest program, however, is the National Peace Program. Tell me about that program.
Right, that program is actually the avenue, the vehicle which we deliver the programs. The whole thing about it is when you think about crime, and you know, we had a lot of talk around here about crime, you know, crime and violence from the 90s and then the high crime in the 2000s. What I wanted to do is to make sure that as we deliver a program, that it didn't have to rehash this whole thing about crime. What we want is peace. So the National Peace Program is really the vehicle where we are going to deliver all the aspects, all the pillars, all the objectives of the National Crime Prevention Program. There are some aspects that fall outside of the National Peace Program, but the National Peace Program is where the project implementation unit is, the secretariat is where the change agents fall under. That is where the action is. So the National Peace Program holistically is really government's response to the crime, and it is also the vehicle in which any Barbadian, every Barbadian can get involved in the program.
Another program would be the Direct Intervention Program, where you looked at the gangs. Now, you came under some pressure a few months ago when you said that there are only two main gangs on the island, but Barbadians are saying there are a lot more than two.
And I tried to explain then, and I thank you for the opportunities for me to explain again. I think what Barbadians or some people were doing, they're mixing up the difference between a gang and blocks. Now, blocks can form a gang. They form an allegiance to a gang. A gang is a set of persons who follow a particular code. They usually have a color, they have a leader, and they have a kind of code of respect and that they follow. The code of conduct, we will call it in more professional circles. If you saw what happened in February with the coming together of two main gangs, however they did it, what you saw was the reduction then of homicide and violent crime. And that should say to Barbadians by now that there really were and really is two main gangs. One of the things I want to point out, because this is the part that people don't focus on, we had a situation in Barbados where the persons of the streets came together and they put on the table what they intend to do in terms of, you know, coming to peace. And they have lived up to their part of the bargain. And I think that we as a society have to look to that. A lot of people will have a lot to say because they know how Barbadians think. But I think that we should think on that and think on how we should see and how we should treat to that. But I think that over the last 6-7 months, I think we've been able to demonstrate that there really are two main gangs in Barbados. And if people want to understand what gangs are about, cities as large as Chicago normally carry two main gangs, you know, the Bloods, the Crips, or whatever. Even in Trinidad, Jamaica, much larger societies, you will see 2 or 3 main gangs, some other small little gangs that don't even register on the Richter scale. If you think about a country, Barbados so small, what you're thinking about is 56 blocks. But those 56 blocks, 60% subscribe to one gang, another 30% subscribe to another gang, and then you have a number of loose cannons in between there. So I stand by my statement of fact that there are really two main gangs, or were two main gangs in Barbados. I think what a lot of the persons on the streets and in the communities is saying that we're really about this violence and thing. A lot of them want to be able to make a good living like anybody else in this country. And a lot of them have stated to me personally and indirectly that they want to participate legitimately in the society. And through this ministry, that's something that we've been trying to do at great pains.
So since that peace pact between the two main gangs, as you said, there has been a reduction.
I think that is not even for me to answer. I think that Barbadians can see it through the facts, through the reporting, and through the statistics. Last year, this time, I believe, I'll double check, we were over 36 homicides, or around 36. We are at 13. So I think that, and since the pact that they had, I think we had like 2 isolated cases of homicide, which my aim is perfection. My aim is 0 crime, right? But realistically, we would understand from the time I think Cain killed Abel that we really had crime, and what we could do is try to reduce it as much as possible. One of the hard crimes to even try to prevent is things like crimes of passion, like somebody getting sent with somebody in this particular moment. I think that we could still even try to target those by, teaching things like conflict resolution, teaching people how to deal with the emotional and mental state, how to deal with things in the moment. So I even think that we can even try with those. But with the best will in the world, the best programs and projects and policies and plans in the world, I still believe we will have isolated cases, although that doesn't stop me and my team from aiming for perfection, aiming for zero.
You mentioned statistics for homicides, and obviously those get the most attention. Outside of murders, is there any type of crime in particular that worries you?
Lisa, the truth is, I am concerned about all crime, right? Even cybercrime, even white collar crime, all crime. But if there's one that would say keep me up at night after we saw the reduction in the violent crime and homicides, is really like robberies and burglaries, crime against the person. Now, I wouldn't say that we have seen an increase or a decrease. I'm still waiting on the statistics, right? What I would say is that with the reduction of homicides to report, you would get a higher reporting of robberies, obviously, because if you have a robbery and a homicide, which one are you going to report? The homicide, right? And one of the other things is, although they are seasonal, like for instance, around crop over, you will see an increase for obvious reasons. Around Christmas, you see an increase. You will see that the Barbados Police Service, and sometimes with patrol, the Barbados Defense Force, that they increase patrols and they increase ads for crime prevention and so on around these times, because these are times where you have heightened robberies, because it is said that people trying to get, people want a little ticket to go to a little fete here, and you will see the increase of activity, particularly a crime against the person and robberies. Again, through situational crime prevention, but also understanding the trends and so on, we are in a better position to prevent the criminals from committing crime. That's really the medium term. The long term is what we've discussed for majority of the show, is how to prevent people from becoming criminals in the first place, so that whether it's Christmas, Independence, or Easter, that people have no appetite to want to commit crime, that people can, be able to sustain themselves without going the route that a lot of them sometimes tend to go around these seasons.
We're a small society. Therefore, Barbadians have a fear in some cases of retaliation. Do you find that Barbadians cooperate enough with law enforcement personnel?
They don't, and that's the truth. And anybody in the Barbados Police Service will tell you that although you may get some cooperation here or there, and it's not even unique just to Barbados. A lot of people fear for their safety in terms of giving information. Then there is true popular culture. There is this thing against snitching and being an informer that had become so popular through music, songs, videos, music videos, movies, films, whatever. That is a big part of it as well. Another part of it that, even although not under my direct remit, that I've tried to work with, because I realize that crime prevention has to be so comprehensive, it isn't funny, is how the Barbados Police Service interacts with the public. Now, obviously, there are other more forceful aspects to policing and law enforcement. And what you find, even you see these viral videos, that there's a lot of conflict between the police and the perpetrators, or the alleged perpetrators. And a lot of the time, the video are really caught from the middle, so you don't really know what happened. But it really always seems as though the police are using excessive force, they're not being professional, and so on. And that has definitely driven a wedge between the society and the police. And that can impact how the persons within society will wish to give or cooperate with the police. When you put on top of that, as I said, being a snitch, being an informer, your safety being compromised and so on, it doesn't make it any easier in terms of having that cooperation. And you need that cooperation actually to pursue and prosecute crime, because you need witness, you need evidence, you need these various things to have a successful prosecution.
So is your office then going to look to create a harmony between members of the public and the police service?
Even before taking up this role, and since taking up this role, I've met with the top brass of the Barbados Police Service on this specific issue. There's a number of mechanisms in place already. There are a number of mechanisms, and what I'm trying to do is strengthen them. So there's the Police Complaints Authority that's supposed to bring some kind of responsibility when these things happen and it is proven that there's excessive force or unprofessional conduct. Within the police force itself, they have the Office of Professional Responsibility. But in meeting with the top brass, shortly after they launched Operation Keiki Connect. And what that did was to take the high-ranking members of the force, they're going through certain communities, reassuring the public that they want to have that relationship with them. I'm very impressed with that particular program. Obviously, I've highlighted some challenges and concerns I have where sometimes you may have a Keiki Connect, in an actual incident, you had a Keiki Connect on a Wednesday and you had some bad incidents happening on the Thursday. So obviously that will undo what Operation Keiki Connect is trying to do. But I think generally once we can be firm, we can be forceful, but we also need to be professional, because at the end of the day, with social media and with persons already being cynical and anti-managerial class already, people right across the world already have a problem with authority. So when you come down and you show as though you are using excessive force and so on, that drives the wedge wider and wider apart, and it makes it more difficult for other officers. So I think that everybody should be on board with officers doing their job in a professional way, even if they have to be firm that they're still professional.
No, you are the member of parliament for the city, and in certain pockets in the city and its environs, you do have instances of crime. What are you doing at that constituency level to reduce crime in the city?
They do. I think Bridgetown City is one of the most peaceful cities that I've been to in a while. I think that the reputation has been out there for the city due to increased poverty, increased crime, and so on. But since we've had a cool down in violent crime, what I have been doing is implementing programs in the particular communities. I want to say a special, you shouldn't really shout out one because then the others get jealous, but I would say a special shout out to New Orleans, the Beverly Hills Club. They're putting on out of season football right now as we speak. And I was traveling before on business, and my first match I was able to see was on Sunday night. A lot of people were sending me videos. A lot of people were telling me, even the police themselves from the Bridgetown Division, were telling me how impressed they were, and they continue to knock on wood, that you have a number of blocks that were at war just about 7 months ago, and so many of them gathered in one spot. They tell me how big this thing is, and from video, you can get a sense. But being there in person on Sunday and seeing the crowds like right around the field so thick, and just watching the game 1, game 2, and from all the different communities in cities and all the communities in Barbados. I think parking become an issue because I could see cars parked all through Boxers Road going around. I could see all the different number plates from all different parishes in Barbados, and it warmed my heart. It really, really makes me feel so I'm really touched by it. And that's why we have to salute people when they do well. We want to punish people when they do bad, right? Yes, we all do. But when they do well, I think that we really got to salute them and reward them and have that positive reinforcement. The other thing, as I said, the number of programs that I've implemented quietly, and some not so quietly across the city from the time we came in, empowerment programs. We have programs for persons who are survivors of crime, survivors of domestic violence, and really trying to give people a whole new hope, really and truly, because I tell my constituents all the time, my main thing when I walk away from this in 3 years, 5 years, or however, whenever they tell me, it's time to go, that I would have left the place cleaner, better, more empowerment. People can look after themselves and not have to turn and depend on people. And that is what drives the programs that we put within the different communities in the city.
Looking at crime holistically, that would include border security. What can you tell us about plans to ensure that the island's borders remain safe?
Right. I did a tour, I think, in my first few weeks in this position, because again, I wanted to be as comprehensive as possible without, trampling into people's domain or remits or so on. I was in contact with a security consultant who lives in Barbados but does security in North America and the UK. Because when it was appointed, it was it was very high profile. So one of the things I benefited from was a number of people coming and speaking to me and giving me advice. And there are a number of Barbadians in law enforcement. And being appointed in October, by December, a lot of them were here on vacation from the FBI, Barbadians in the FBI, and they came and they told me a lot of stuff. In visiting the various ports and different things, I was able to speak in a way that the authorities have told me they've seen even less attempts, because when we were speaking about it, we spoke about it just to the correct level. So you don't say it too much to expose certain strategic things of national security, but you don't say it too little, because a major part of crime prevention is to deter. It's not only about detecting, it is about deterring. I said then, and I will reiterate now, we don't have a perfect situation, but we have a tremendously improved situation. Since this administration came in, and I'll give them props on this, I'll give us props on this particular point. They have improved border security 100-fold. So one of the things I was told was that, for instance, we had a particular part of things coming in where we scanned like 2%. We now scan 100%. That is a dramatic improvement. A lot of things, we had a lot of issues about cameras and where cameras should be, and we went from a very, very low number of cameras to over 500 cameras, right? And we were how we put shifts in place and a lot of mechanisms that have been put in place. And that is why I say, although it is not perfect, the areas of weakness that they identify at their own level, they're working on. But a lot of the areas that were wide open have been closed, and we've actually seen the results of it. What I want Barbadians to understand is, you can hear the talk and the lot of long talk, but what you need to do is to look at the facts to judge yourself, right? And I think some of these things, of course, at national security, you won't be able to release certain things. But a lot of these things, you got to ask yourself a question. You used to hear a lot about certain things coming in, and this thing about this container, this thing. You don't really hear that anymore.
Does it mean that they're not coming, though?
Yeah, and a lot of times it does, because if there were, you will be hearing about it. So there are reductions in certain things, and I will let the persons more responsible for that speak to that individual if they want to, when they want to, if they want to. But I myself, with the information I do have, I am very confident, very sure, very satisfied that the measures that have been put in place over the last 5 years have started to bear fruit right away. And I think that is something that all Barbadians should feel good about. Should we get complacent? No. Should we rest on our laurels? No. We should make sure that every loophole, if there still exists, are closed. But even more so going further, because I put it this way. You know, we say we need to look at border security to stop the guns from coming. And I said, no, we got to deal with the mines. Because say that we can get any guns in Barbados, but you could get forks, knives, you know what I mean? You still have weapons, so you got is the mindset more so that I'm interested in. Because if you got the correct mindset, no matter how many guns, forks, knives, you are not going to commit harm on another person. That's why I like to go to the root. Because we could root out the guns like in the UK, but then they have problems with stabbing. You understand? We need to root out the mindset. And I think that is what is important.
Let's focus on the criminal justice system. Mm-hmm. Is the system working to try to deter persons from a life of crime?
I think in its own way it does. But as I said earlier, we have one R to this criminal justice system. The criminal justice system focuses on the criminal and less on the justice, in my opinion, as a whole. And why do I say that? As I say, when we look at the punish part, we get the responsibility part done part. We can use some time, we can give a fine, we can give community service. Community service, good thing. But I think that we should have about 7 R's in the justice system, apart from responsibility, because I want to make it clear, I believe in holding people responsible. I believe in giving people the time to match the crime. I do. But I do believe that there must be aspects, and I'm seeing it more and more, a lot more magistrates reach out in the last 2 weeks alone, to looking at how do we add the R of redirect, diversion programs. Very, very important. Sometimes someone comes before you, you do not want to put them in the justice system. You want to be able to get them in programs where they can be reformed, where they can be monitored, where they can be put in long-term programs of counseling and action and intervention. So that's an R that needs to be added. The rehabilitation, the process of change, the process of highlighting to the inmate what it is you've done. How can you confess? How can you mend? How can you get forgiveness and forgive yourself and get that person that you commit the wrong to, not in every case, but in as many as possible, to bring that rehabilitation, true rehabilitation to the individual. That is another R. The other R is how do we restore? Restorative justice. How can that person make tangible amends, in some cases, to the persons that they have wronged? And things like expungement. How can we restore them where even if we do not expunge the record, you seal it so that they can still do certain things in the society and keep out of prison, restoring them. Then obviously you got the reform where they're now a changed person, and then you get the release. You release them into society and then you reintegrate. That is the last R. And our reintegration is how the family, church, schools, welcome them back, make sure that they get that training or retraining and then empowerment so that they can now be sustainable and be law-abiding citizens and be productive citizens of society, paying taxes, building homes, building families, getting the population where it needs to be. You get where I'm coming from? Those are the R's I think that we need to have more focus on in the criminal justice system. The criminal justice system, in terms of holding people responsible and punishment, we got our part down pat. These other aspects I think we need some improvement on.
From a more regional and global perspective, you recently returned from Brazil for the 13th Security and Justice Week. What were some of the best practices and lessons learned from that week?
If I had to choose one, it would be their forensic lab and forensic capacity. But there was a number of other social programs that we would have seen in terms of how they work with impoverished communities and the empowerment, that how they go about empowerment. I link it to another program quickly I saw in London. I think it's important for the public to understand when you travel that you must be able to make sure that what you're doing gives good value for the travel. So there's a program called the Avalon program, Gloves Not Guns, and these different programs that we've been able to bring back here and model to Barbados. That's where we got the Guns Gone, Gloves On come from. And so it is important that we go and we see these different things. The other thing is how they collect data and how is data driven into the program. So for instance, that's something I definitely think we have a weakness here in, and something that I am working still with them. I created a number of colleagues there that working with me to actually see how what I've seen, how we can bring it in the Barbadian context.
And I'm glad you mentioned data, which leads me to my final question. Now, back in January this year, you pointed a finger at members of the media, and I'm a member of the media, where you said that we were creating a false narrative when it came to the reporting of crime. Now, as far as I'm aware, journalists, we in the profession, we get our information from the Barbados Police Service. Sometimes you do get sources that give you information, but that information is cross-checked with police. We don't manufacture stories, Minister.
Right. So in my defense, though I don't like to defend myself, I like my record to do that for me, is that what I said is in terms of the way our media report can create a perception. And I stand by that. I too see myself as someone in media still. I see myself as a media person. And let me try to clear the air on this. I think that the media does a fantastic job in certain aspects, and like any other profession, including politics, ministers, or whatever, there's sometimes you fall short, right? In terms of the perception of safety, I'll give you an example. Barbados had a 187% decrease in crime against the tourists, right? And I read this in a report. And at the same time, there was a study of how people felt about crime against tourists. Now, if you had 3 reports of crime against tourists around that time, the perception of the public would be what? That there is high crime among tourists. Now, before you could have had 20, but we weren't reporting. Now you have 3, and you report all 3, and you have them on the headlines, and you repeat them and so on. You can create a perception. I am not saying to the media what to report, how to report, or so on, but the media as the fourth estate has a responsibility to report the truth, to report the facts, and to make sure that they report in a way that is fair and balanced to the society. The media can create a lot of fear in society, even although they may not mean to. And for me, it was just point out to say, let's get the perception part of it right, but do the job how you want to do the job. It was not an attack on the media. Some of it was taken out of context. You know, it's very easy to do a headline, and the headline makes it look like, what it isn't. And a lot of people, or some people, don't read past the headlines, and that's really, really the issue. I've been on both sides, and I think I have a very good understanding of it. And my intention is really to have a good relationship with the media. But when I see something that I think that can be improved or whatever, I still believe in this society, because of my love for this country, that I can highlight it without it having to be a major issue.
I hear you. I understand what you're saying, but I also understand that we have a responsibility, and we don't manufacture stories. So it's either factual or it is not. I understand perception as well, but perhaps we need to have a greater conversation in terms of persons reading then beyond the headline.
Correct. It's called media literacy, and it's something I don't blame the media for. I blame our level of critical thinking in the schools and various things. This is something I've given a lot of thought about. This is no fly-by-night idea for me, and that's why even when I was in the media, what I would try to do is try to be as fair, balanced, independent as humanly possible. We all have our own biases, but at the end of the day, as you said, it is about reporting the facts. So for me, I would like the opportunity to sit with the media, to sit with Barjam, or
I'm sure Barjam would like that.
And we can have this discussion on how we can best work in the society for the best interests of not the party, the politician, but the people of Barbados.
Well said. Minister, thank you so much for taking the time and sitting and chatting with me. I appreciate it.
The pleasure was mine.
Thank you so much. That was the Minister of State in the Office of the Attorney General with responsibility for crime prevention, the Honorable Corey Lane. I'm Lisa Lord. You are watching One on One. Do have yourself a wonderful evening.